Hello, my name is Annette Wilson. I'm the art teacher at University High School of Medical Arts here in Jonesboro, and I wanted to share an activity that I did with my fifth graders this year on Dala Horses from Sweden. Okay, I'm going to start with the history of the Dala horse. The reason that I chose this, I help volunteer with a horse rescue here in Jonesboro, and my students all know about this. I talk to them about the horses that we have. And so I came across the Dala horse, and so I wanted to learn a little more about it, and I found it very interesting, so we just incorporated a lesson on it. So the image of the horse goes back thousands of years. The magic and mystique surrounding the horse inspired people to recreate their image in cave and rock dwellings. Horses were highly valued and became a symbol of strength and courage. They arrived in Sweden 4,000 years ago and were tamed and domesticated around that time. In the 17th century, little wooden horses were sold at markets in small towns and villages in Dalarna in central Sweden. 100 years later, wooden horses were carved by men working in the forest during long winter evenings and brought back to the village for the children to play with. This is how the little wooden horse from Dalarna became a treasured object. These simple wooden horses were later painted in bright colors inspired by the flower patterns painted on furniture and walls in that region. During this time, traveling salesmen selling traditional household items would also bring dollar to use as payment for board and lodging. They also became an important source of income for poorer families. Even young children had to learn to carve wooden horses after returning home from school. The children of one such family started a small business at the ages of 13 and 15 in 1928. Their children and grandchildren were still producing the Dala horses to this day, or are still producing the Dala horses to this day, in a little village called Nusnus in Dalarna. Their Dalahäst has now become an authentic symbol of Sweden. It wasn't until the World Exhibition in New York in 1939 that the Dala wooden horse became famous around the world. A giant painted Dala horse was placed outside the Swedish pavilion and caused a sensation among the visitors. During the year after the exhibition, 20,000 Dala horses were shipped over to New York, and so the Swedish Dala horse became a symbol for Sweden. Now, one thing that I would also talk about is that they had the World's Fair back then, and that was how other countries came in and brought things from their countries to share. You might also bring up, I know Tesla brought his electricity and showed it off there. So that was a really big thing back then. I have a couple of videos that I am going to show. Let me just click on this and see if it'll just start on its own. My internet is a little bit sketchy this morning.
have a very special connection and feeling for the real horse. Very early, since we have a meager soil in this part of Sweden, we have much sand and stone. It's no good for agriculture. There were possibility to work in the forest for people, so they lived for weeks in log cabins. Horse was so immensely important to the people who lived here. In free time in the evenings, they started to carve a toy for the children home, and very often they choose just the form of the horse since they love the horse so very much. The special thing when you produce a horse, you can see here the production sequence. We start with a piece of plank. It's a waste wood from Siljan sawmill nearby. We take our pickup with sacks of horses and go mostly up north of Dalarna. And there the carvers sit in their homes and carve the horses for us. So it's a home industry. We can always tell who has carved the horse and who has decorated it. Each artist has their own way of expressing themselves.
It's so cute.
Yeah, they're cute.
I don't know how to explain it, but did you see that red horse up there? I saw my dresses and ran to my neighbor who had antique store and bought that horse. So
4 main reasons why the Dala horse was born here. The love of the working mate of the forest, this fantastic material to work in. Knife, curb its decoration.
I'm new at this. My old friend said, maybe you would like to gain some horses? And I said, yes, I think I would, actually.
It's not like we're ordering people to, you must produce that, and could you please carve some for us? Then it's very important to have the continuity and the understanding. We have so many people, they work voluntarily when they want. We have painters who sit down and paint, and the first horse is just perfect.
Okay, so the art standards that we cover in this lesson, I can use what I know and what I have to create art. I can explain how people use art to tell about their culture. I can respond to a work of art and imagine how the artist created it. I can investigate times, places, and different cultures by looking at a work of art. So I think this covers these standards. Great. Okay, so for the activity, you're going to make your own Dala horse out of paper mache. First, you will design your own Dala horse from the template provided to you on sketchbook or on paper. Be sure to take the time to brainstorm what you want on your Dala horse. It can be decorated with something that you are interested in, or you can make it Christmas themed. It's up to you. I would suggest using the inking pen under Legacy Tools. Remember to have a different layer for each part that you decorate. Remember the elements of art and try to incorporate as many as you can into your horse. Now you can then bring it to life in the texture and color labs by creating a paper mache one. Now, I did this with fifth grade, and this was this year, 21 and 22. I found, we have had a couple of years where we didn't do as much hands-on. We did a lot of computer work with Sketchbook, and they have trouble doing things with their hands, and you all have probably found that too. This took a lot longer than what I expected. I would probably try this activity with sixth graders next time, and be a little more explicit in the directions. And I'll explain that kind of as I go through it. Okay, so I gave them, and I just pulled this off the internet. This is just a template for the horse. You can make them whatever size you want. I just thought we needed to have something so that everyone's horse would be close to the same size. So if you wanted to do something small like this, you can bring that on down. Of course, I remind them of the elements of art. And then this is actually the size that I gave them. I had trouble. You can tell, what students are using Google Classroom and which ones are not. I would probably just have them do this on paper and hand it in to me. And the reason that I want this is so I have an idea of what colors I will need when they get ready to start painting. So this would be good because some of them I didn't know, so I had to go through and ask the students. But I really want to make sure that they paint their horse the way that they designed it. So that's something I reflected back on and decided I probably needed to do better. Okay, I would break it down into these parts. For the barrel of the horse, I talked to them about, and we used newspaper. So what I did, I just got a bunch of copy paper boxes. I put newspaper. I put a few of these templates in there and masking tape. We did talk about masking tape use. Told them do not cut off a piece. Don't make your pieces any longer than your index finger. It turned out to be a better idea just to say, okay, we are going to make something about the size of a baked potato, because they really wanted to make it flat. So trying to get them to make something three-dimensional, it was a little bit of a challenge. So we made that, and then I had them roll it in aluminum foil so it kind of looked like a baked potato. So the next part would be the head, which is, another rectangular figure similar to this one. So we would need to do that. And then a right triangle here for the neck, because if you just set the head straight down, it's going to look weird. And then a right triangle for the ears. And, you only need one set because the way that they cut the ears, they go straight across. For the legs, what I did, this was one piece, and we just bent it right here. and we put tape here and here. So 2 of these would be, you could measure and see about how long you have here, which you can incorporate math in here. The length of the barrel, and then you have the length of each leg, and then add that together. So, it may end up being bigger than 5 inches. So, add a little math in there. So you have to get them to fold them or roll them with the newspaper. And then I went on and had them roll it in aluminum foil. That gives it a little stability. And then bend it. And then just put a piece of tape across here and across here to hold those. Now, they'll have to really kind of overbend to get them to stand up. If you have trouble, and here's some designs. I just added a few in here. So if you have trouble, you may want to use some picks like this, or maybe some tongue depressors, and add those to the legs, and you can just use some masking tape to kind of help hold them up and get them formed. I had to help a few students with that. I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, the tools that I used. I just went to the office, and most of them, I guess, probably now have cross-cut paper shredders, and I just went and emptied it out, brought it back, and soaked it in tubs, and just let it get soft. And then I put them in my blender here, and just blended it up. And then I used this right here, or you can use a colander and strain it. And you just strain it out. And you want your paper to be moist, but not, water dripping out of it. And if you want to do this way ahead of time, you can run it through here, and then you can just take the box lids, line it with aluminum foil, take your paper, just kind of squeeze it, put it in there, set it out in the sun, let it dry, and then all you have to do is rehydrate it, and it doesn't take but just a couple of minutes to rehydrate it. I used the mixer to help mix my solution up. Okay. Now, I got just like 2-3 pair of older scissors, because when you use this aluminum foil tape, it will make them sticky. So you don't want them doing that to all the scissors. Okay. Now, once we had all of the pieces together, and you ended up having to glue the neck and the head and the ears with hot glue. And everybody did a good job with the hot glue. They did this on their own. We just talked about glue safety, and I had those in designated spots, and I was over there supervising them too. And if I told them, if you're not comfortable, if you've never used a hot glue gun, let me know and I'll do that for you. So luckily, knock on wood, we didn't have any burns. But anyway, I cut a piece of this to go around the barrel, and then a piece for each leg, and then to go up the head and the neck. It just kind of connects it all together, and it really smooths everything out. So now, it is a little bit difficult, but they'll get the hang of it, peeling the backing off of it. I did not do that for them. I told them that's on them, so they had to do that. All right, so here's the recipe, and I just got this off the lady on YouTube that she makes a lot of masks, and she's really good at it. She used 1 1/4 cups of wet paper, 1 cup of joint compound, and she said do not use the joint compound that comes from Walmart. And then 3/4 of a cup of Elmer's glue, and then flour. And I just used flour until it got as thick as I wanted. When my blender started to get a little bogged up, I knew that was time to stop adding flour. I wanted it to be kind of the consistency of cake icing. So there's your Elmer's glue. and you have the wet paper. And I just picked up this flour at Aldi. It's like super cheap. Now this is what I went to Home Depot, and this is the joint compound that I used. And I did this with 4 5th grade classes, and we did not go through an entire bucket of this. I had to make it several times. If you put it in the refrigerator, and you can do that, I actually got the little cups at Sam's, the little I guess that they use in restaurants that has the lids. I actually had some. You could put them in Ziploc bags though. I would put them in that and put it in the freezer. I mean, in the refrigerator. If you put it in the refrigerator, you got to make sure it's covered. If it's not covered, it will mold. But if they're covered with the little lids, it'll stay good for a week or so. But I'm sure you can freeze it also. Okay, so once they had everything stuck together, then I actually let them use butter knives. Of course, they don't use them in the cafeteria, but we talked about knife safety and all that. We never had any issues with that. You can go to Harbor Freight, and I got like little spackling, I think that's what it's called, little plastic spackling things. They come. There's like 10 in a little container, but they're plastic, and you can actually put that on there with those. I wish they were just a little bit smaller, but anyway, they just started in, and I told them, here's the best way to do it: hold it by the head and upside down, and put it on the stomach and on the legs. And once you get the legs and everything finished, then you can do, the back end of the horse, and just keep holding it with the head in your hand. Once you get all of that finished, then you can turn it over and stand it up, and then finish it on out. And sometimes it took 2 classes to get this done. And you don't have to bake it. You can bake it. I did that with the first batch, but you really don't have to. It will air dry just fine by the next day. So I kind of learned that. Then once they do that, then they can just start painting. So we had a lot of variations, and I didn't put all of them on here. I had one that looked like it had a rabbit head, and one would look like a brontosaurus, but they enjoyed it. This was my best one. This because it brought in culture from another area. It showed how they had limited natural resources in Sweden. I really didn't know that until we started doing this lesson. So it's mostly forest. So they used that, and they had something that ended up becoming very popular, and they still use that today. My hope is to get one for maybe Christmas. I think it'd be neat to have one to display in the classroom too. So if you teach high school, I think that you can probably order these where they are not painted, and might even be able to do some carving on that. I don't know that I would want to try. Definitely would not want to try that with younger students. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Sorry, my internet was a little wonky today. I can click on this. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time. It's annette.wilson@nettletonschools.net.